Well, hello, welcome. I'm super excited that we are doing this video. Firstly, obviously nervous, but I just really want to get to know. I know we've been talking for over a year now, almost. Is that when we first started our thing
Uh,
together, collaborating or getting stuff through?
Under a year, but yeah, almost a year.
Well, let's say a year. And because COVID was funny, I think we've lost track of all 2020. And I'm well aware how bad situation in India currently is.
Yeah.
So is it a very serious lockdown that you guys are in at the moment?
It is really serious. I mean, we had 300,000 cases for the past 2 days. And
Yeah,
we are in Mumbai, which is the worst hit so far. So
yeah.
it's can't go anywhere. Everything's shut. Groceries are only from 9 to 11. After that, you have to be at home. You need stickers for your car if you want to get out. So it's scary. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, and I can't even look. I've obviously got family there, friends there, and mom and dad. And every morning I wake up and I give them a call, and I'm like, "Yep, that's another tick. It's another day." It's just even though they've had their vaccines, you just know.
Yeah,
But
the vaccine. So
yeah, but look, we'll talk about the positive things. And talking about positive things, we can talk about independent. Is that how you like to call it, or ind?
Um, so basically, it stands for independent, and we've
Yeah.
played a D, so INDIE. So we've made it I and dash D. So we actually pronounce it as indie, and that like kind of stands for independent.
Oh, that's cool. See, I didn't know that part. Indie. Well, I've been pronouncing your platform's name wrong the whole time. But so Indie, how did this come about, and what sort of background you guys had? Because it's an amazing platform. I remember when I came across it, my eyes lit up. I was like, oh, this is super unique. And then I went through all the labels that you guys had. And I was like, oh, this is Nagaland. This is Chandigarh, like different parts of India. And I understand how complex of a country India is. And you found these. So how did it all start?
So we started thinking about this, I would say 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was Sakshi and I felt really lost, in a world full of fast fashion, big box brands. Sakshi and I have always loved design and been into design. And while feeling lost, we were like, okay, what can we do? So we used to go for all of these exhibitions and pop up stores around the country, and we found so many makers that were super talented, but they did not have a platform. And our favorite
Mm,
part about visiting these makers was actually hearing about their stories. So that's when Sakshi and I said, hey, why don't we start building a platform that brings all of them together, but most importantly,
yeah.
all about their stories, about their processes, and what makes the maker them, right? So what's their story, what's their personal story, what's their journey, what's their design inspiration, and all of that.
Yeah. So that's actually why we started it. And I mean, in India too, if you go to like a big mall or, see what kind of exists out there, it's become dominated by international brands because they're the ones who can kind of afford the rent, etc. So these small makers only kind of exist on like a local level at exhibitions or if they have their own Instagram or website, but it's such a spread out space. So we thought let's consolidate these independent makers who have a unique voice and tell their story.
Yeah. Wow, and it's amazing, and just also it's not only the big brands, it's not only India, it's everywhere in the world. Because not say, for example, anyone starting out, they can't afford a mall space, that financial capabilities either to showcase on such level. Um, but yeah, so is that, and was it hard? Like when you guys started it, how did you bring them on board? I know you probably created a website, but was it hard? How did it all work?
We are a lockdown baby. So although we started working on this lockdown, we were supposed to launch last March, so March 2020. And then the lockdown hit. There was so much uncertainty. So we didn't know if we should launch because the environment was so weird. Like how do you push out and tell people that, hey, buy our product, right? It's just
Yeah.
very So we kept pushing it. But then we also realized when we were talking to our makers that they need help too. All their businesses are home run. Some of them have one employee, some of them have five. They work with craftsmen across the country that are in villages. So we just felt like we needed to support them and onboarding process.
So basically, like we mentioned, a lot of brands we found actually we saw physically in exhibitions across India, a lot in Bombay, all across India. So a lot of the brands you actually see on the website, we've actually met these makers and we've kind of convinced them even before we had the platform that, hey, we're doing this, we'd love you to be a part of it. And we stayed in touch and eventually got them on board. But because of the lockdowns, etc., a lot of makers we actually found through Instagram and through like online research, through looking at blogs, through seeing what's kind of going on, stalking old exhibitions that happened and finding brand names and looking at their pictures, seeing what materials they make. But a big part of what we do after we like products we see is having an interview with the brand, much like what we are doing now. So in that interview, actually ask them questions like, where do you make your products, where do you source your raw materials from, what's your inspiration. So that does two things. One is it tells us the authenticity of the brand, like how much do they actually care about what they're doing. And secondly, we get the bigger picture, how many employees work there, where what do they care about. So that's kind of.
And in a video, when you're talking to someone, like, or even on phone, you get the sense how honest they are. And they're not just making anything up. Like, it's not just an email. You get that human emotion touch to it. Yeah. Sorry, I think I just lost your voice there for a little bit. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I'm sorry. No, see, that's just so incredible. And that's what attracted us when Siobhan and I had a look at it. And I was like, oh, look at these guys. This is exactly what we want to do. Like, not in Australia, but something that we were craving for. And yes, there are things like that everywhere, but it's refreshing to see it. And I don't want to take anything away from big brands. Like, if you take my life back 8-9 years, I was as materialistic or brand oriented people that they come. So I've experienced that life, and it has been a gradual change because of certain experiences, or I guess some people call you've matured maybe, but I don't think it's to do with maturity. But the big brands, like, they've all started from a garage too. They've all, like, things that we talk about, they did, but it's just, I guess, we crave that authenticity where you don't want to be dictated. I remember at uni, I met this friend circle where they came from different sort of backgrounds, but they loved their brands. They loved their bigger brands. And all I could think for 3 years was, okay, what can I sacrifice to be able to, or how can I do extra work to be able to get my hands on certain things, because then I would feel I'm part of this society. But I was 21, so I'm glad I did it. But but then you eventually find yourself where it's not dictated to you. This is how you need to look. You can wear things how you want to.
Yeah. No, that actually resonates with us too, because we feel that, there are these international trends now more than ever. It was always there. You're right. And of course, we can't take away from big brands, but there is a feeling of wanting to fit into something you might not be. So for us, find who you are and pick what kind of works for you, versus exactly what you said, versus seeing what everybody else is doing, or what a brand or a marketing campaign is kind of telling you should look like or be like. So this is finding yourself. And the way we put out products is like, look at how it's made. It's made in this place, this is the thought behind it, and if that resonates with you, that's when we hope you can buy it.
Yeah. And it's super in terms of, even like, again, from personal experience, Siobhan always had her own sort of style. She wasn't but I remember when we first started dating, there was this, I was obviously wearing all these strange brands, and she'll say, you dress up like a 60-year-old man, because I would have, let's say, a very particular Ralph Lauren shirt and a sweater and like these pants. Because in my head, I was like, oh, look, I'm glad that this is what I'm wearing. She's like, why are you dressed up as such a old man? Then I'll get her presents, and which were always, again, I thought this is what will make her happy. And I'll tell you, some of those presents that I spent a lot of money on, they never got any use out of anything. They've gone to either op shops, because she's like, there was, I can't name the brand name. There was one particular bag I got her, and she looked at it and she's like, it's so ugly. Why would you get me something like this? And she just gave me a full serve, and we almost, I was like, is she going to break up with me because of this? But she didn't. She never used that bag. It's just, and yeah, it's just one of those things, I guess. With, sorry.
Tell us about why you started the Bonpinda Collective and your story behind it. Because I know it's similar in a lot of ways, but we actually want to hear it from you.
Well, it's, look, we've traveled, like lived in different places over the last 8-9 years. Siobhan and I both. We met in Melbourne, and that's where we were. But we wanted to start, Siobhan being a teacher, and I worked in education system too. We saw a lot of uniforms, obviously, that schools wore and all this stuff. And as my mindset was changing about, okay, the choices that I was making, where I was buying stuff from, I was like, oh, where do these mass-produced products like school uniforms, corporate wear, factory work wear, where do all these guys make their stuff? Because as individuals, especially in Melbourne, Sydney, certain parts of Australia, people were so forward thinking about where they were buying their products from. But this particular part we weren't sure about, but then we didn't know. So we started researching. Basically, we had a year in Shanghai, because China seemed to be the country which still to date produces everything. Like it is the manufacturing factory of the world. So we were lucky enough to live there for a year. And as we started looking for things, of course, we had culture barriers to, it was really hard to trace it down to the raw materials, to everything. And then we found that there were a lot of ethically made sort of labels that you can get, but in reality, it doesn't really serve any purpose down the chain. I met a lot of people, and nothing against them, and we weren't being judgmental, but I wasn't comfortable. We couldn't make stuff in Australia at that stage, didn't have the finance, the wages are very different, but also the skill set and machinery. And Australia is only a 25 million people country, so it's only so much a country could make. Then we went to India, of course, and it was a light bulb moment. She wants like, why don't you try in India? And even in India, we started from southern part of India upwards, and we met some amazing people who could give us a lot of transparency, but we still didn't have that comfort level with them. I don't know why, but it just didn't sit well in our heart. I'd given up on it a little bit in a way, be like, okay, would we ever get to form that relationship with someone who can make products for us? And we were in my hometown in Ludhiana, and it's a textile hub. And I was talking to one of my friends whose family has been making clothing for 30 odd years. And they make uniforms as well for audiences in India. And luck had it, or destiny had it, we just had the same value system. Hitesh and I hadn't spoken for 12 years, but as we were talking, I was like, okay, this is what these are the guys. It wasn't about only the sustainable materials that we could use in the process. It was about not just giving anyone, okay, this is probably a little bit better and we will tick the ethical box, but paying enough where people could have, like they could go save and watch a movie, where they could save enough to send their kids to school. They're not relying on a charity, that they were self-sufficient, but through training, they could go up. And they were just, so we created this little group around us, and we started making uniforms, which is still, I still feel like a startup with it. And the collective part came because of Siobhan, because Siobhan, my mum had given a lot of gold, as Indian parents do, to my sister-in-law and my sister, but I think she was like, we've kind of run out of money in a way. Business is not like that. So I don't know what else to like share. Like, so I want to give you more, but then you guys have paid for your own wedding. And she wants like, why would you have to pay for our wedding? We decided to have a big party, so we should pay for it. Then mum's like, well, I've got this dari that she made with her grandma, so the dari rug. And she bought it out, and Siobhan looked at it, and there were 3 of them. And she said, I've made this with my grandma 50 years ago. And she wants like, this is amazing. And my mum's was like, is she joking? Why is she so interested? And that's how it came about. She wants like, how many more of these dari rugs are in these villages which are handmade, and do people still make them? I said, yeah, but at a different level. And then we went down, and in Punjab itself, the culture of making daris was more of kinship, where the women were housewives. They would go pick up the cotton crop, dye it, and then it will take 22 days to make them. So it was their entertainment, a skill, a craft. A lot of my cousins, my friends, they were like, you're so stupid. You're going to try and sell these dari rugs. And I said, they'll look good. They're sitting in a trunk. And then we just went to different villages. We found them. We heard the stories, how they were made in 1960s or 70s. And that's how it all started, from the collective. And then it slowly has emerged to a small space that it has. But that's where we started. And we are trying to find the same people, similar sort of stories or independent brands in Australia. It has been hard because we started in lockdown too, but the Bonpinda Collective is more of a community we want to create. It's nowhere designed to make just a profit-based thing. It's about, okay, bringing those people together and just learning together. And it happens to be, it's miraculous, but it all happens to be, apart from someone that we've brought on board now, they all happen to be women. It's just, and their passion and the craft and the understanding was very different. Like you guys, like other people that we work in India, they all happen to be women as well. And I always say, through Bonpinda Collective, I feel like I'm getting education, like I'm getting educated. In uniform business, where we've got the other way around, we're working on a bigger scale manufacturing products, we seem to be the one educating. We seem to be the one educating about, okay, why do we need to know where our raw materials came from? Why do we need to pay these wages to these guys? Why do we need to work with these particular fabrics? Because they are in that really strict routine of making products for 40 odd years. So they're like, why? And their thing is, it should all be focused on profit. So it's a very interesting little loop that we've created.
That's
Yeah. So
can you tell us about the name? Like, how did you all create the name Bonpinda?
well, it's Bonpinda. So my name's Pushpinda. Siobhan is name short Bon, so Bonpinda. I think one of our friends, we both love cooking. One of our friends had come over to our place and we'd made Indian food, and they just said, oh, welcome to Bonpinda Curry House. So the name Bonpinda stuck. So that's what they had called. And they were just, and that's just Bonpinda became something that people started referring us as. And the elephant and bird was basically the logo itself. Initially, when we came up with it, bird was me, and Siobhan was the stability, the elephant part, and we both look at that balance. But if I think in a lot of different analogies in life, it makes sense. The elephant, like I think in any relationship, I'm sure with like you guys as a team, you need that balance of creativity, freedom, and that leap of like, you know, the risk-taking ability or living life to full, but then you still need that calmness, stability, wisdom that elephant provides. And you swap roles and you don't, like, that's how our logo came about. It was mainly just like the characteristics that we think we had as a couple, but just things that we want to live by. But I reckon that particular logo is applicable in so many ways now, because it represents something really strong.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how our name came about. But what I wanted to also know, and this may sound a bit naive, but when I came to Australia when I was quite young, so I haven't really had much work experience in India in any way. And the India that I grew up in, I didn't see that many women entrepreneurs. I see a lot of ladies having small gigs or boutiques, or, you know, like you see a lot of small businesses, but someone creating this. And it's something that I've just discovered over my travels to India over the last decade or so. But was it hard at all being women in particular, or to start a business, or is that not something that exists in Mumbai or in India now?
It exists for sure.
Yeah.
I would say we come from a privileged background where we haven't had the struggles that most of India does and most women do. So that we're exceptionally grateful, because I think both our families have been super open-minded. We've gotten the best of education. They've always encouraged us to go out and work and fend for ourselves. Um, so I think we come from very privileged backgrounds in a sense, because that's not the rest of India. The rest of India do have their struggles. Some of them can't work. Some of them are not allowed to work. Some of them don't have the encouragement from their families to work. Or, for instance, if they need, say, even 500 rupees to start something, they might not get it. So,
Yeah.
in that sense, I still think we come from a very privileged background where we can go out and we can say, hey, we want to do something ourselves. Not everyone in India has that, for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that we wouldn't be like representatives of the entire, like Isha said, we do have a certain privilege and we're aware of that, because you know how it is over here.
Yeah.
But there is a massive class difference, like you know this, and
Yeah.
so we are very lucky and very fortunate. But we do think that, you know, at some level things are changing.
Yeah.
These conversations are happening. Conversations about that, the idea that a woman is allowed or not allowed to work is like, you know, people are criticizing that. They're saying that's ridiculous, like, you know. And these, just the fact that these conversations are happening and changes are being made now. Women are working more, even at jobs. And yes, in Bombay it would be different from other parts of India still, but there are waves of change which are happening.
And I think that's even the change is happening at a level where women in villages are also, for example, allowed to work now, or they want to work, and dedication is coming from them. So to give you an example, a lot of our brands work with women craftsmen, right, across India. So one of the brands that we work with, Heirloom Naga, which is from the Nagaland brand that you're referring to, she started it, I would say, about 20 years ago. She started the company in her backyard, and now it's become an international company where she actually sends out these handmade products to brands all over the world.
Yeah.
She women craftsmen that come from the Naga tribes. And what she's done with them is that those women are allowed to work at their house. So she's given them looms that kind of fit. She's given them looms that fit into their living room, for example, where they can take care of the child but also work at the same time. So I think models like that, that brands establish with their craftsmen, help a lot. And that's when the craftsman families also will say, okay, fine, you can work as long as the child is taken care of. So I think change is happening at all levels. Of course, for us, it was a lot easier, but change is happening for sure.
Yeah, that's and it seems like, even again when I talk about our dairy rugs, one of the things that we found, that everyone who'd made them, they were housewives. It was a craft they had learned, but the younger generations, like a lot of the ones that we knew, they didn't really value them. They weren't showcasing this is something my mom or my grandma or great grandmother had made. But as we were getting them, they were like, even when we asked, like, okay, this is what you can get, and like, this is how much we're happy to pay. It's just about we are grateful that you have allowed us to take this and forward it on to someone. They were just so emotional, most of them, because they were like, oh, we just can't believe you guys value what we made, like a craft. And they are like these women like weren't from poor households. They were from like nice households, but they were just something that belonged to them, a talent that they had. It wasn't just cooking or like cleaning or looking after their kids, which is nothing small, but like it was something that they thought, okay, this is something we do and it's been loved. So look, and I'm drinking out of the Reika coolers now, but Reika, whatever I've read about Reika, and I really want to do a video with her too. How did you found her? I love her studio setup. I love how, like, she just seems like, with whatever I've read, some amazing woman. How did you find Reika, and what's your experience with her?
So I think 4 or 5 years ago, I actually was her student. I learned pottery from her, and I saw products way before Indie started. And I used to make some like diya holders for Diwali. So like we do gifting during Diwali. So I remember back like 5 years ago, I was like telling my family, this is what we're giving this year for the Diwali gift. And she is a very inspirational woman, and and even in her, I would love if you like can speak with her, but like as a student, when I was in her studio, there were certain things that she had very strong values about. Like her system is like, even in a class, there was a level of independence which was given to a student. So like simple things. Okay, so the way education works in India, I think, is quite different. Like even in an art class, you're kind of told what to make. Like if you go for an art class, it's like, okay, draw this. This is how you draw it, for example. Yeah. But I remember I went for Rekha's class, and she's like, okay, we're going to be using this technique where you kind of create something with slabs, okay, like with planes, but you have to draw something. And I was like, oh my God, I have to draw. Like the first day of class, I'm like, what do I draw? What, like, it was such a experience where, she really makes the students think about what they're creating, like what their inspirations are. Also, very independent in the sense that when you reach class, nothing is readily kept for you. You have your own set of tools. You have to go get the clay. You have to prepare it yourself. You have to prepare the glaze yourself. You have to clean the wheel after you're done. And in India, like, I mean, I'm sure in Australia, these are very normal, right? But in India, even in school, we're used to somebody kind of cleaning up after us, in a sense, So these kinds of small things, like, really, made me appreciate that class. It felt like it was some place where, like, a part of it was mine, and I had that kind of autonomy and independence, and I was responsible, for cleaning up the space when I'm done, and making sure everything properly, and even if I've made a glaze, washing it out, washing out the wheel, and washing. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done pottery, but washing out the potter's wheel is a good like 15 minutes, at the end of class.
I love the idea. I never got around to it.
Yeah. So her studio is beautiful, but at the same time, she keeps that independence of the student. She gives you that responsibility to think and to also be responsible for what you're using and what you're creating. So it's a very different approach. And of course, her tactile, and like her tactile feel, her minimal aesthetic, it does get, conveyed to a student, because that's how she approaches things, but she still gives you the autonomy to kind of decide what you like and what you want to make. And I just fell in love with her products back then. And I think when Isha and I conceptualized Indie for the first time, I was like, Isha, we have to get Rekha on board. So I called her and I'm like, listen, I'm starting this. And she's like, absolutely, would love to be a part of it. And she is very happy. I mean, thanks to you too. But yeah.
It's amazing with Rekha. I think, like, it's, you get a sense, and one of the things, yes, I'm in Australia, but and I'm married to Siobhan, who is Australian. And I think we might do a few video series and where I can talk about it. Wasn't easy. Even I'm a Sikh, cutting my hair wasn't easy. Marrying someone not wasn't a Sikh, let alone someone who was from Australia, wasn't easy either. But one thing that I'm very, and I'm again, it doesn't apply to everyone, but we do. My name is Pushpinder. I'll always be referred to as someone who's from India, and people who haven't traveled much, or people do have that image of India. It's one of the things that Ivy and Maya are twins, like they are half Indian, half Australian, and I want them to be, at no point want them to be not proud of where I come from or their grandparents come from. So that has been a big part of Bonpinda Collective, or what we do in daily lives. You want them to think of every individual, doesn't matter of where they come from, as equal. But then you think of India as people think of it as like this country where there's poverty or there's some extreme rich stuff. And I always say, and of course China faces a lot of that too. But I'm like, if think about it as a company which has 1.4 billion employees in comparison to any other country, like how there's so many different brains, there's so many different complications. Whatever, yes, the section of society, not everyone's the same. I love traveling in India. Siobhan's probably done more traveling. Every 100 kilometers, culture change, food change, people change, and the people who have the least, and I've experienced that myself, having used to go to work with Dad on his work sites the people who had the least, they had the biggest heart, and it's valid till date. Like I remember Dad was like, if you really want to eat a good meal, go sit down with those guys who are like laying the bricks, whatever feed they are making, that's going to be the best sort of food. And it wasn't that you were doing them a favor, but you can just see that in their eyes. And it's really unfortunate with COVID, we can't travel much. And I'm glad we found you, because through you, we can come across these amazing people like Rekha, uh, who, uh, who represent a different India, I guess, than India a lot of other people know. Like, and I won't sugarcoat it. I get really offended when people are like, okay, so you're making your products in India. Have you got a sweatshop there? Like, what they think of, hear the stories. And I'm like, no, you have no idea. And I know they don't mean it, but it really hurts, because you know what connection you have, what difference you're making, not in their lives, but through this work of ours, we've got an opportunity to make right livelihood in a way, and there's food on their plate, um, and the way we treat people. But so that's one thing, part of me that I really want to bring in whatever way we could afford to. These beautiful little stories from India to here is to showcase that aspect as well. And you guys are a perfect example. Like I'd like where you're like, okay, there is Isha and Sakshi. We actually just had a chat in English, and we just, this is what they do, and this is what their value system is. So that is that is a big reason as well. So to Bonpinda Collective for me personally.
Okay, that's really lovely. Like, it's a really lovely thought, and yeah, you're right. There are many different layers to India. So I think what you said, when you travel every 100 kilometers, you see something different, and maybe a new culture, different type of food, maybe a different language. Right? There are so many
Yeah.
languages here, and there are different layers of society too. And I think something that even we at Indie make sure is that we ask those questions: who's making your products? And many times when we ask that question, we get to hear the name of the artisans. We get to hear, because these are small makers, so they really do care about who's making their products. A lot of our brands, for example, Kayare, they empower women too. They've given women training. They've given women maybe their first salaries, and that entire feeling that these women are like, oh my god, we are making money for something we are doing. So there's a sense of um, so yeah, there are pockets of people we are empowering too, and we're very happy about that.
And I'm glad you brought Kayade up. What they do with banana fiber, it's amazing. Like the sustainability is obviously a very strong part of what we do in our uniforms or even here. Like it's a very important part. What are your thoughts in, because I obviously believe global warming is a real thing. I do want my kids or like future generations like to do the right things and do whatever possible. And I think the world is taking some great initiatives, small or big. But what are your thoughts on sustainability? And is it something in your friend circle in Bombay that you talk about or you think about now more than what you used to, I guess?
Definitely more than we used to.
Mm,
That's a conscious thing that we also try doing when we pick out our brands. And like Sakshi said, we ask everyone certain questions. Although we don't have a foothold into actually controlling what our brands do, we trust them enough. And like you said, right, when you have a conversation with someone, you can call their
yeah,
bluff. So there have been times when we've spoken to a brand and we've not felt like they are on the same wavelength as us, or they don't follow certain value systems that we appreciate and that we want on indie. So I think in that sense, we always make sure that we pick brands that have some kind of sustainability outlook, or that just want something better for the environment. Um,
yeah.
Sustainability is also a very tricky word. It's been
Mm.
thrown out a lot right now, so it's kind of used as a flashy thing, over sustainable, over this. But I think to us, what is sustainable is um, just making sure you do something that helps the environment, right? In any small way, and every small thing that you do kind of adds up to it. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And there are conversations about sustainability in in society too, but I don't think they're enough.
yeah,
I don't think they're enough. I think having it at a product level is not enough. It needs to be spoken about more and really, incorporate it into your lives. In fact, right now
mm,
on Indie, we're working on some content to bring in. What we've asked a few brands what they do to make their like their daily rituals more sustainable, and a couple of brands have shared those steps with us. So we're going to be putting them out in the next week. So we
Yeah.
want that kind of conversation too. It is something which is something we talk
yeah.
about and want to put out there through our platform.
And not everyone
Yeah.
knows what they can do in their daily lives to be sustainable. So for us, it's also about educating them. Not that we know the most in the world, so that's why we try and connect to people who know more than we do, more than Sakshi and I do, right? And that they can educate us, and we in turn, because we have this platform, we can educate the people that are on our platform. Just tell them that, hey, this is what X and Y do, and if you resonate with it, if it's something that you can incorporate in your daily lives, well and good. So we just try and encourage that in our own way. We don't want to shove an idea on someone's head, but we just tell them that this is what's out there, this is what people are doing, and now see if it kind of resonates with you. And this is what you can possibly do if you want to take that extra step.
Say that's completely Siobhan and I, we get really, we're shy in terms of social media or anything. Like it's not our forte at all. But we don't want to, we voice anything, we don't want to come across as preachy in any way, because we recognize we are not perfect either. But there are small things that we have changed in ourselves slowly. And it's about doing that right thing. I think it's just breaking out certain habits. We are very lucky. Like I'm very lucky. Siobhan's parents, they've got that. I think even like our older, that's people in 80s or 90s, even my childhood in India. If I think about my mum, what she did, what happened to any leftover food, what happened to old clothes, she will get them exchanged. And dad used to get annoyed. Dad will be like, just give it to someone. And mom's like, no, 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 I'll buy a utensil in return. And it was like barter system that they did. She will keep all the cardboards aside and all the empty bottles, and then she'll give it to someone who would buy them from her for recycling. From And it used to annoy us, I must admit. It used to annoy me, my dad. We were like, why are you collecting all this rubbish? Just give it. And but then I realized, no, it was also one, it generated some money for her, extra money that she didn't have to ask dad for. So it was a side pocket money. Second thing was that she just felt that this doesn't, like, she knew how things compost, what is biodegradable, what's not, what can be reused, what not. And my mum didn't go, she only went to school till year 10. But she knew that it was a lifestyle thing. And I reckon in between somewhere, I personally, I got a bit lost for 4 or 5 years. Like, the generation got lost as the multinationals came to India, and a lot happened, like packaged food come in, a culture change, a cultural shift happened.
Yeah, and we admit that we aren't perfect either, right? So even we've shopped from the H&Ms and the Zaras, but I think for us it was just about making that conscious decision where we're like, okay, this is not what resonates with us, so now let's go out there, find makers that actually do something that we enjoy and we like. So we're not perfect for sure. We're definitely not there yet. We're trying to get there every single day, but there's a long way to go for all of us.
And I
Yeah, and
what you said,
sorry.
sorry, cultural shift. I think it's all of us are coming in a circle, right? When you looked at your mom and she was kind of putting together these things, and you're like, what are you doing? I think we've had those same experiences, maybe with our grandparents, but now we're like, oh my god, Dadi, how do you make that achar? Like, oh,
Yeah,
like, makes sense. Like, suddenly, some like things which didn't make sense are making sense. And I think it's not just us. I really do believe that there is a full circle movement happening in the world. People are more, you know, curious about the older ways and about how older generations even handle things like waste in a country like India, and and are appreciating versus dismissing the older ways of life too. Whether that be like craft, whether that be, you know, a way of cooking, a way of keeping things, and yeah, I think there is a full circle movement happening.
yeah, and it's, I think each individual, India as a country has so much to do, and Australia as well. They're both like, it's every country. There's a fair bit. I guess I think about with the things that we had. One of the things that happened during COVID was when Dad rang, and he was like, "Hey, look, this is the clearest sky I've seen in the last 25 years or so." And he's like, from not far from here we can see a mountain. And I was like, I didn't know that there was a mountain so close to our house. But and that really, like, it made a big difference. And I was in India, I know, with no pollution at that time. uh, but again, people, it's say at the same time, India and China, I find, or like some of the Southeast Asian countries, are easy targets too to pick. uh, People like, oh yes, let's just dump it all because there's so many people. Of course there's pollution, but then as a consumer they don't realize you're consuming these products. We've all, some, obviously there has been sacrifice made somewhere, to bring it to what it has come. Like, and I've, one of the things I remember in southern part of India, something had come about, sustainability. I was talking to someone and they took me somewhere and they were like, this is all the plastic that's come from a container has come from India to be dumped on Indian grounds or some. So what are your thoughts on this? And that was a shock, because you just don't know what actually happens. Or you might think you're doing the right thing, but what is the end result? So, but yeah, social media is great though. And I think that's where technology is great. We have all that platform to ask questions.
And we should keep asking them. I think questions like where does this end up is important, you know.
Yeah. And look, and I'm aware that you guys are in serious lockdown. I'll ask one question lastly. What advice would you give to your younger self if you had, like, with, in terms of like your choices, and what it could be, indie related, sustainability, ethicalness, anything. But is there anything that you'll be like, I wish I did that when I, from much earlier than when I started it?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I would tell my younger self to be more grateful and appreciative, and know that, like, you're lucky. Like, know that.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
like, you're very lucky, and be grateful.
yeah,
Um, Tough question. I think for me, I would say go with your gut. I feel like, for example, the example like you gave about your mom giving utensils or giving clothes for utensils, for example, my grandmom used to get clothes stitched all the time, right? And all of us, or she would get saris made and she would actually get craftsmen to do the embroidery on them. And I always said that, why are you doing this? Why are you spending so much time? Um, and in my gut, I always knew that that's the right thing to do, but I also went with the trends and being like, oh, we can buy this from the store, we can buy this from the store. So for me, it's just about trusting your gut and appreciating where you come from. And there's a
Yeah,
reason why our mums and our grandmoms and our great grandmoms did something for a reason. So just
yeah,
appreciating where you come from and your background and the story as to why they did what they did, because it does make
yeah.
sense.
Yes, no, that's, well, yeah, that's probably, and it's, yeah, it's again coming around circle, isn't it? And you can say you matured, but I'm glad if that's the term that people like sometimes want to use. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I matured.
What would you want to tell your younger self?
Oh, look, oh, there'll be so many. I can't. I'm a slow learner. I would do something and try it, and I'll learn that way. Like I would make a mistake and learn, make a mistake and learn. Um, I think just be, what did to my younger self be? Yeah, just keep honest to yourself. Like be honest to yourself, to your heart. I think when I turned 30, which wasn't long ago, but I looked back in 10 years of life flashed in me, and I think the only things that I regretted were the things that I could have done, and it could be in any way that I didn't do. And I think life's too short to have regrets. Just try whatever is in your power and make the best use of the situation in whatever way. So yeah, I would, and I'm trying. Look, it's about change. I like to think about, there are a lot of things that I know my that are, you always know what you need to do with yourself to make yourself better and than what you were yesterday, for example. I reckon that's the part that I just want to every day try and become a little bit better uh, for myself. Like just in your deep down inside, I reckon there's this voice, and you're like, okay, maybe do this, and it could be anything. It could be a bit more kinder. Isn't that what your soul is asking for? So yeah, I would just, yeah, follow your heart. It does know the way, kind of thing. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true.
No, it's lovely. We do
But
have one more question for you, actually, which is our indie question, Isha.
So we do this indie question with all of the brands that we have on board. And because our name is independent, the question is, what does the word independent mean to you?
independent of independent means to me freedom. I think is the first thing that comes to my mind. Um, just freedom, choices, freedom to make your own choices is what independent, where someone's not dictating anything to you. So I guess it's just, yeah, that's why maybe I've started something where I didn't really, it sounds bad, I didn't want to have a job, but I started something, but I just, yeah, to be free, to be able to make your own choices regardless of the circumstances, and not being dictated to, is what independent means to me. Be yourself, yeah, unique, because it's like fingerprints. We are also same but so different, and yeah, we and if we were all the same, we'll be pretty boring, won't we? So independence good. we,
Great answer. We love that. And I think both of us feel the same way. So
yeah. Well, look, and I think, and I will possibly stop this recording, but I reckon it'll be great if we made a bit of a series about this and we touched base again, because I feel like I've only scraped the surface now. There are a lot of more things that I would love to talk about. And next time we'll make sure Siobhan's here too.
And the
So just,
yeah, we want to see them.
No, that's super good. I'm just going to stop the here.